Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in everybody. I hope you guys are all doing tremendously well today. Today I'll be going over the new Vanessa items in the Bazaar, as well as doing some quick theory crafting for them. If you enjoy this video, please drop a like and subscribe, as it helps the channel tremendously. On release day this Wednesday, I will also have a video coming out where I'm ranking all the new items. Beyond that, let's get into it. Starting off, we have Bladed Hoverboard. Now this item is a medium weapon, tech, aquatic, and vehicle item. It has the effect to give adjacent items a cooldown of 10%, and when an adjacent item is used, it deals 20 damage. As a general note for this list, item upgrades will be rather speculative. For example, this item is shown to us at silver tier. However, at gold tier, it may increase the cooldown given, or it may increase the damage, or both, or neither. You never really know, so it can be hard to gauge. So just remember that there's a little bit of speculation as we go throughout this video. For theory crafting, I feel like this item falls into two different pools. There's the cooldown path, in which you're using this item's cooldown reduction to discount important items. For example, if you run this next to Orange Julian, it could be quite effective because you would give Orange Julian cooldown. It also obviously has the bonus of, Julian giving your bladed hoverboard extra damage. But you could also run this next to Katana or another item you want to go off as much as possible, as when those items go off, it's really good for you, but then also you get a nice little bit of damage as well. If you're really leaning into the damage path of this item, ideally you would want to get as much damage on the hoverboard as possible, and then run some spammy effects next to it. Something like Orange Julian could be really nice to give the damage boost, but you can also make this work by using items such as dive weights and pearl and put them next to the hoverboard to just make the hoverboard do tons of damage. Or if somehow you were able to get an infinite and put it next to the hoverboard, it would be quite insane. If you're using this as explicitly a cooldown item, I could see it on the board as something like Orange Julian, Sea Shadow, Eels, and Corzina Crest, for example. As a damage item, I could see this on a board like Hoverboard, Dive Weights, Pearl, Orange Julian, Holsters, Cannonball, or Powder Horn for your dive weights, and then something like Captain's Wheel just to kind of speed up a couple pieces. The next item is Cauterizing Blade. This item is a medium weapon and tech item. It has the effect to deal 20 damage and burn 2 every 5 seconds. It also has a quest-like effect where you can either scale it with haste or slow after you haste or slow 10 times. Once the quest is unlocked, every time you haste or slow, depending on how your quest went, the blade will gain 10 damage and 2 burn for the fight. Now, I kind of see this item in two different ways. To me, it reminds me a lot of Shark Ray, and it reminds me a lot of Mantis Shrimp. For haste items, I could see this working well with Water Wheel, Holsters, Captain's Wheel, etc. I could see a board with tons of haste items where you run something like Water Wheel, Blade, Dive Weights, Shot Glasses, Pearl, and Beach Ball. If you go the slow direction, I could see something like Dock Lines, Mantis Shrimp, Blade, Clamra, Shot Glasses, Illusia Ray, Mr. Richardson, and Tripwire, for example. Next up, we have Cyber Psy. Cyber Psy is a medium weapon and tech item. It has the effect to deal 5 damage every 5 seconds. Additionally, it has 10% crit chance, and the first 3 times you crit with this item prevent all damage you take for the next 1 second. For me, I don't really see this item carrying a fight by itself. I think it's more a survival piece that you can use with a more solid win condition. You can run a bunch of crit and cooldown on your board, and then you hope your Cyber Psy goes off a bunch of times, and then also crits all 3 times, to essentially make yourself invulnerable. While this is happening, you can allow for your true win condition to come to fruition in the background. An example board I thought of for this, while unlikely, would be something like Crow's Nest, Cyber Psy, Soul of the District, Captain's Wheel, and Corzina Crest. In this build, Cyber Psy would allow for stall while your Captain's Wheel slowly charges your Soul of the District, which will eventually one-shot your opponent. Just as a general note, a hasted Cyber Psy will essentially provide immunity to you 40% of the time it's hasted, assuming it's permanently hasted. Next up, we have Dart Launcher. Dart Launcher is a small weapon tech item. Every 4 seconds it deals 5 damage. If it is next to a slow item, it'll also slow 1 item for 1 second. And if it's next to a poison item, it'll also poison 3. It also has 4 ammo. To me, this item definitely has a lot of potential. It feels like the definition of if you put enough stats on an item, it eventually becomes good. I don't think you likely run this late into the game. However, very early days such as 1, 2, and 3, I think this item is very strong. For example, if you have a day 1 board, you can run this with Catfish, Dart Launcher, Bolas, and something like Katana. And you'd only really want Katana if you get like a really good weapon skill. But then toss a grenade in there, and then you have a crazy board. I just think this item is very strong early. but it's really not great unless you have something like catfish or jellyfish to provide the poison boost. Integrated HUD is a small apparel and tech item that gives the item to the right of it 10% crit chance. Additionally, when you crit with the item to the right of this, slow one item for 1 second. I think this item could honestly be used in a fair few boards if you already have additional outside crit chance. Then you can just throw it on your fastest triggering item and cause a bunch of slow on your opponent's board. For me, I really see this succeeding in quick one weapon builds, however. If you were to run something like Katana, HUD, Silencer, Star Chart, Crow's Nest, and Corzina Crest with some sort of scaling from skills, that would be absolutely lethal. You would have a Katana that not only is scaling damage, but also healing, and also slowing your entire board, which sounds awful to play against. Next up, we have Kusarigama, which I hope I said correctly, which is a small weapon and tech item. Every 6 seconds, it deals 5 damage and slows an item for 1 second. It also has the effect of when you slow or crit, this and adjacent items gain 5 damage for the fight. This item really reminds me of, is it Jitty? Jite? I don't know. But I don't think this item is necessarily strong enough to run a board around it. I think you could slot this into maybe the cauterizing blade build, and that would be pretty comfortable. For example, if you were running it next to blade and another item, it could be decently strong scaling as well as slowing, but I think you could also toss something like a Corzina Crest into a build where you're running this item to just add a little bit more potential scaling into your build somehow. Oni Mask is a medium apparel and tech item. It has an 8-second cooldown and the effect to burn 3. When you crit, your burn items gain +3 burn for the fight. When you slow, Oni Mask is charged for 2 seconds. To me, Oni Mask seems like an alternate or complementary win condition with the slow blade build. You can use it to buff your blade and your mask. You can also consider using this item in a very crit and slow heavy build. It's very comparable to items like Lighthouse and Darkwater Angler, which already find success in these types of builds. To me, this stands out as an item that if you already have a ton of slow pieces, you can consider just tossing this in there. Or you can also run this with just tiny little bits of crit like Corzina Crest, just for scaling. Going back to the blade build we talked about earlier, I think you could drop things like Richardson and Illusia Ray and Mantis Shrimp from that build, and maybe throw in an Oni Mask or some additional crit into that build. As another additional combo, this item really loves the new HUD item I just talked about, as it provides both crit chance and slow. Shuriken is a small weapon with an 8-second cooldown. It has the effect to deal 5 damage, and it has multicast equal to its ammo. When you use this item, spend all of its ammo. Now, I think this design is really cool. First of all, this item works extremely well with damage scaling. If you can get the damage high enough on this thing and give it enough ammo, you can kind of just carve through your opponent with one burst of this thing. That would be the utter dream, is just one-shotting somebody with your shurikens. This item also has pleasant synergy with Cannonade and Trebuchet due to the fact that it's going to give you multiple charge procs on these items. Also, adding more ammo is obviously very helpful to this. This item also synergizes really well with Powderhorn because you can use your big shuriken boost and then reload everything with Powderhorn, so you can kind of use your big burst multiple times. Additionally, I don't necessarily think this is an item that you build around, but more so an item that can really nicely fit into builds and kind of help tie things together. I see this item being run in a build where you can either boost the damage up a lot with something like Augmented Weaponry or with Figurehead. In general, I see a board coming together like Figurehead, Pistol Sword, Shuriken, Repeater, Grenade, Bolas, and Revolver. Basically just a full spam weapon build with ammo. Sounds like a dream to me. Next up we have Stealth Glider. Stealth Glider might be the most unique design of this set. So, Stealth Glider is a large vehicle and tech item, and it gives your items 20% crit chance. Additionally, for the first 3 seconds of the fight, you take no damage. And the first time you use an item each fight, lose all damage reduction. Now, the later in the game you have this item, the better it gets. The later in the game, the faster each fights get, and the more important this item becomes. Now, if you're really worried about going against something like a really fast keg, or another really fast one-shot build, you could run this item to counter those builds, or for example, if you had a 4-second item, you can basically defend yourself for the first 3 seconds just to ensure that your item really gets to go off and you win. I do kind of feel like this item is a bit of a win more card, because the way I look at it In order for this item to be effective, you need to be able to just win the fight with your other 7 item slots, as this item doesn't necessarily contribute the most to winning success. I also feel like winning in 3 seconds can still be really difficult late game. It's by no means guaranteed, even on the latest days. So I am a little bit worried that at higher tiers, if this item doesn't upgrade the amount of time you get, it could be really lackluster. However, I really like this item's design because it could allow slower items to shine a little more in the late game. Additionally, if you do have a board that has 3 slots to spare, this is a great item to just be able to throw in there. You'll have a little bit of crit chance and a lot of invulnerability, and it can straight up just kill some ultra fast one-shot builds that exist in this game. One build I could potentially see working with this is something like running this item, Boulder, Silencer, Captain's Wheel, and maybe another beneficial small item. This would really kind of help you stall for those first few seconds, and then allow for your stuff to start going off, just to give you just a little bit more survivability for Boulder. Or if you were able to get a relatively low cooldown sniper, for example, just provide a little more survivability in stall, especially if the duration is increased as this item gets upgraded. Because if it's like 5 seconds at diamond, running this with a sniper that goes off at 5 or 6 could be nasty. Finally, we have Wetwear. Wetwear is a medium aquatic apparel and tech item with an 8-second cooldown. It has the effect to shield for 10. When you use a weapon item, it gains 20 shield for the fight. Additionally, if you have another tech item, this cooldown is reduced by 2 seconds. As a general note for Vanessa, you don't have the most tech item options besides kind of the different tech items you get in this expansion. So if you do want to get the duration of this item discounted, you need to either have either of Vanessa's submarines or basically the items from this expansion. Beyond that though, I think this item is actually quite good. It's really nice if you have a bunch of weapon spam, as if you were running a bunch of weapon spam before, it was a bit of a damage race against your opponent. Well, now you can run a bunch of weapon spam, but also provide a bunch of shield and defense for yourself. 20 shield per weapon proc is quite a lot, and if you think about something like Katana going off every 2 seconds, that's pretty nutty. I mean, by the time it goes off at 6 seconds, it'll be doing 70 shield, and you will also likely have other weapon items doing their thing. I don't think this will be the kind of item that will scale very well into the late game, but I think early game it could be quite strong. In terms of theory crafting, I don't necessarily think it's going to enable or create any new builds per se. However, I think you could really just run this in red number weapon Vanessa spam and be happy that you're doing tons of damage but then also shielding a ton in return. If you had a day 1 opener of Wetwear, Katanas, Catfish, and Dart Launcher, that would be pretty disgusting. Anyways, everybody, that's all the new Vanessa items, as well as a little bit of theory crafting for them. I hope you guys all enjoyed. I'm excited to show off the new expansion soon. If you found this video helpful, please drop a like and subscribe. I'll catch you in the next one, and I'll see you on expansion day. Take care, everybody.
I'm just trying to get this, let's go get out to the phone.